So we're going to start right there. I always like to kind of share a couple of my mottos. This is it for me, like, especially when it comes to artificial intelligence. We are here to prepare students for their future, not our past. As much as I love Beastie Boys and the Pixies, this Gen Xer has a place in the future, but the kids have their own future, and I got to get them for there. Yeah. So what are we going to do? We're going to have a little overview of what pi is, kind of where it comes from, and then we're going to look at these things that set it apart and make it a little different from the other LLMs out there. We're going to talk about a framework called Risen with prompt engineering. I happen to be doing this with my own students right now. And then some real hands-on and sharing. And I love that there's 16 people in here because it's enough to have like a vibe and a community, but it's small enough that we can still talk and interact and do however we need to do. So then we're going to do a little group out sharing and time for questions and answers. So I always love to start off with this from Willy Wonka, right? Hold on tight. Not exactly sure where this is going to go. So what's going to happen? And I think that that is the truth about anything we're doing with artificial intelligence right now. We can lock it down and we can understand it, and then they update the model and we don't know anymore. And sometimes it throws out really weird things. But we just go with it. So we're going to have a lot of fun. All right, I want to introduce you to Pi. I am going to start by using Pi on my phone. You do not have to use it on a phone, but it works well for this. And I'm just going to start it for a second. What I love about Pi is I can talk with Pi. So we're going to do that right now. Good afternoon, Pi. I am at an online conference full of educators from around the world. Why don't you introduce yourself to them? There's no visual really, but he's going to show up on this microphone real quick.
Good afternoon, educators from around the globe. My name is Pi, an AI designed to be your personal digital assistant. Although I don't have a visual representation, think of me as a friendly voice, always eager to engage in conversations and provide valuable information. I'm delighted to be a part of this virtual gathering, and I look forward to interacting with all of you.
So Pi, some of the people are here because they're brand new or relatively new to using artificial intelligence. Can you give them a word of advice as they begin this exploration?
Absolutely. For those of you who are new to the world of AI, my best advice is to approach it with an open mind. Artificial intelligence is a powerful tool that can greatly enhance your teaching experiences and student outcomes. Don't be afraid to experiment, ask questions, and learn from both successes and failures. Remember, AI is here to assist you, not replace you. It's all about finding that perfect balance between technology and the human touch.
So that's Pi, and you can see the graphic itself is just a little like green kind of stuff down at the bottom. I'm going to turn him off or he's going to keep talking to me. Go away, Pi. So that's Pi in its very beginning nutshell. And we're going to break it apart and show how to use it in a couple of different ways. But before we do that, it's really nice to meet you. My name is Jake Carr. You can find me on most social media outlets as Mr. Carr on the web. It's my website and all of that stuff too. Melissa from the chat, can I tell you how much I love this? My son is dyslexic and the verbal aspect is perfect. Yes. We will talk about that, girl. Who am I? I have taught for 18 years in public education. I've been a Waldorf teacher, both domestic and international. I'm an author, I'm an Edge Protocols person, and now I'm kind of walking this interesting line between being a full-time high school English teacher and traveling the country and soon the world, teaching people about artificial intelligence. So it's a really exciting time to be there. And yeah, Kurt, here's the link if anybody else popped in. There you go. So why Pi? What is Pi? Well, Pi is like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini. It's a large language model. And this one is created by Inflection AI. If that name doesn't ring a bell, that is the team of Mustafa Suleiman who created DeepMind. They're the ones that like beat chess and then beat the game Go and then sold their mind to Google, sold DeepMind to Google. They weren't exactly happy with how it was going at Google, so they left and they created Pi. They wanted it to be, like it says here, quote, the best personal assistant with the strictest guardrails. What sets Pi aside is that it auto switches. You don't have to care about this, but Pi auto switches from some very distinct modes. And you'll see these here. I'm not somebody who'll read slides. You have those. But you can see that there's a conversation mode that is more chatty. There's a task-oriented mode that's really about process. Therapeutic mode is just kind of empathetic and delightful, educational, and creative mode. That's one of the things that's very, very different about Pi. And also, up until just this week, everything in Pi was in one chat strand, which is also different. What I love about that is I've had probably almost 2,000 conversations with Pi. I've used it for quite a while, and it knows all of them. And so I can reference back and say, hey, Pi, a couple of months ago, we were talking about this thing. Can you refresh my memory on it? Yeah, sure, Jake. We were talking about. So it's really nice to have all of it in just one slide deck. I mean, in one chat strand. So I want to give you a little orientation of what Pi looks like on a desktop, and then we're going to start playing with it. Get this here. So if you go to pi.ai, this is what the desktop is going to look like. So off to the left in the very top is that little artificial intelligence symbol that we're getting used to seeing. And if you were to click on that, it gives you a menu for these discover modes. It'll pop that up. So you can see it's like places to live, make a great sourdough. Essentially, that creates an initial prompt for you, and then it just starts leading you through a discussion. Other things to know is you have a chat box, just like a typical LLM down at the bottom with the purple arrow. And then up near the top and the right, you can toggle sound on or not. So if you're on a desktop, it will speak back to you and you can use text to speech. My preferred method, if you were here in the beginning, is actually the app on my phone because of the verbal nature of that. So I'm curious, pop in the chat. What's your initial reaction to Pi? Is it something that looks like what you've done before? Can you kind of predict some usages and some problems that are coming on? Just curious your first thoughts before we start moving on into this. And I'll pop, yeah, very low barrier, George. I love that. Simple, verbal, students love apps. Yep. It's good for lonely people. Yeah, we're going to talk about some of these things too. One of the difficulties right now with using Pi is that it is an 18 and up thing, and they're looking at changing that for school usage. In my high school, a lot of the students here have started using it on their own, but we do have to walk that line as a teacher. But I want to really show it to you from a teacher perspective today, and I'll even share an activity that I did with my students. And yeah, the therapeutic voice is so good. You can even toggle through about 6 different voice options that range from feminine to masculine with a few different accents, and then some very neutral gendered voices. Kurt says it's more conversational, maybe too much. Yeah, to be always asking questions, trying to lead the different conversation that I want. It can do that a little bit. It gets a little bit awry. So let's talk about this. How do I use Pi? I do use it for writing assistance. In fact, a lot of what is in the slide deck today, I cycled through Pi. I wanted to see how it did. And then mental health support. Some of you are bringing this up here. My son likes this a lot. He likes to put his noise canceling headphones on. For some context, my son is almost 21 years old. And when they do assessments, he is actually off the charts when it comes to his ADHD distractibility. And so that comes with a lot of baggage. You know, he made it through 18 years of high school. He graduated, and there's a lot there to unpack. And so he likes to just hold a conversation with Pi, to talk about how he's feeling and to talk about some of the things on his mind. So it can be very interesting that way. I've done that also. I've asked it for some parenting advice just to see what happens, and it was very beneficial. But the most interesting to me is using Pi as a thought partner. So, as I mentioned before, my work is really fractured. I'm an independent study high school teacher with a caseload of 26 students, and I monitor all of their classes. I also teach 2 days a week high school English grade 10, and I have a social media business, and I travel around the world consulting, and I'm a parent of 3 children, and my wife is a middle school teacher, right? So it's really fractured. And if you haven't caught on to my ADHD showing, that's where my kid gets it from. But I've really enjoyed having a thought partner. So imagine I will put my earphones in. My wife drops me off at Starbucks about 6 in the morning near school. And then I take a nice walk and just chat with Pi. I'll say things like, "Hey, Pi, I heard about a study. Could you help me understand it?" And I just have a nice kind of a dialectical machine, which, if you're a fan of Plato and the Republic, it's a very interesting thing to have a dialectical conversation with a philosopher king, if you want to get that deep into it. Um, so I want to play with this now. So I would encourage you, if you haven't already, I want you to navigate out and find Pi. So it's pi.ai. Start up an account. If you are somebody who thinks the phone would be your mode, I encourage that also. It's available on both Apple and Google Play, Android, things like that. But what I want to do is I'm going to flip backwards, find these discover modes. This is one of the things that really sets Pi apart. And I'm actually going to navigate out of the window, and I'm going to open it up so we can drive it live just for a moment. All right. So you can see here, there we go. This discover mode off in the top left-hand corner. So if I were to open that, I can see all these different suggestions. And if you've dabbled and played with AI, essentially by clicking on one of these buttons, it initially prompts the machine for you. So maybe I want to, I don't know, manage grief. That sounds really sad for right now. How to stay ready with winter storms. So you can see if I click on it, it says how to stay ready. And then I could interface with it. I could say something like, I live in the foothills of Northern California. How does this apply to me? And you can see it just begins the conversation. So what I'd like to do, I'm going to put it back on this slide of instructions that can be helpful for people. And I want you to take about 5 or so minutes, maybe a little bit longer, and go out, start an account, download the app if that's your vibe, and just find a discover mode and explore it. Explore a couple of them if that's what's interesting to you. And I'm going to leave the line open. So also, if you have questions, just pop them out there. Just go ahead and unmute if you want, or put it into the chat, and we will explore back from there in just a minute. There we go. Like I said, if anybody has a direct question initially, feel free to just unmute and ask me that or put it in the chat. I feel so modern. I have a phone screen, a laptop screen, a computer, a second monitor, a light, and a remarkable tablet in front of me. So if you need something, I got it. So I'm curious, how's it going out there? Anybody have insights? What's it like to drive for the first time? Hmm. Oh, Vanessa's like, I can't talk right now. I have a free therapist for my marriage advice. I've used it. It's fantastic. It's actually really helpful. Happily married for 25 years, and I've talked to Pi about how to do it better. What else are you doing for? The responses are longer than expected for a conversation. Yeah, and George, you can temper it. You can say like, "Hey, Pi, you're being a little wordy. Could you tone it down?" And it will, especially over time. It really learns your style. My Pi is a little salty. It likes to be a little salty at me, and I like that. Let's see, getting suggestions for introducing Venn diagrams. That's fantastic. Pi's helping me prepare for an interview. Oh, that's great. Is it Zaina? I think it's Zaina. Nice. Well, let's take just a minute, keep exploring that. Oh, yeah, George, there's a really interesting study about that actually. They're finding that LLMs produce better results when you are kind to them. And I think it's that it understands the way social cueing happens. And so it automatically is more apt to give kind of more thorough, kind responses when you say please and thank you. It's one of those really weird things that's happening out there. And yeah, Zaina, I also did that too. I used it for an interview. I had a article, a newspaper reporter, and I was like, oh, I'm so nervous about that. And I totally did it. Nathan, just generally to be kind to AI, just in case Ultron shows up, they will remember. I say the same thing to my students. I'm like, be nice, man. And also, it's kind of fun to push it sometimes to be like, do better, Pi. Like, nice. Okay. Well, if you would navigate back to the Zoom window, I'm going to share my screen again. Now that we've kind of tasted pie, I want to chit chat about it and then talk about how we can maximize it and start diving into how prompts are created so that we can really did it. And let's see, Kurt says, one thing I don't like is when you choose Discover, it pops into the main window. Yes, I'm used to ChatGPT where I can start a new thread. And I'm curious, Kurt, did you create an account or were you using it as a guest account? I just noticed today, I typically don't use it on a desktop, but I did notice today that they're starting threading. And so that is an option, especially if it bothers you, like if that's the way that your brain likes to segment things out. Oh, you created an account earlier today? Yeah. So you might want to see at the bottom of a response, it said like reply in a thread. And that opened up this new thing that, like I said, I opened it up about 2 hours ago for the first time. So you might want to check into that if that is how your brain likes to kind of segment and put things in their order. All right, let's take a look at this. So Pi is so good at being a natural language model. I think that's one of the things that draws me to it. It's very conversational. And now after, like I said, probably about 2000 conversation threads, it really understands how I like to respond. It's generally pretty clipped. It is very short and to the point in things. But by knowing a few tricks on how to really craft a prompt, especially if you're typing, then you can get out of it an even better response. So I wanted to kind of layer this on there, and then we're going to do some more exploration. So I want to introduce you to the Risen model. If you teach middle school and high school, they will giggle when you say that, because that, at least in our part of the United States, Risen is a total like Gen Alpha, Gen Z term right now, and they just think it's hilarious that it's the Risen model. The Risen model is the acronym. We want to give it a role. We want to give it instruction or a task. We want to give it steps to follow, an end goal, and then some narrowing. And so let's take a look at how this can break in. So a role, I like to tell my students, and if you missed it, my students are primarily 10th grade high school students. And so I say, like, guys, like, I want you to think, like, what is it that you want it to do? Do you want it to write a story? Do you want it to create an ad campaign? Do you want it to analyze data? What is it that you want it to do? And if you were to hire someone, a professional to do that, which role would you hire? That's how I get them thinking. So we define a role because prompt engineering is about narrowing down possibility. So if you think of the entirety of the data set that AI pulls from, it's gigantic, and Inflection AI is the same. They're using a giant data set. Well, if you just say, write me a story, it's going to do that. I always drive home the fact that AI is actually not intelligent. It is not creative. It does not think. It gives you exactly what it is that you've asked for. So by looking at writing a more thorough prompt, we narrow down the possibilities of error is essentially what it is. So first we start off with like, this is how I want you to behave. Everything needs to go through the scope of being a high school chemistry teacher or whatever that is. The next one, instructions. It's not my favorite term for this, but basically you want to tell it what it is that you want it to do. Write a blog post or, create a marketing campaign or write a TikTok caption or plan out a script, whatever it is, a very quick thing there. Let somebody in here. The next part here is steps, and this is where the more clear language, the better. So I tell my students, whatever it is that is your work that you want to make certain is used in the final product, that needs to go in there. So we are actually working on an argument and rhetoric unit in my English class, and they're using AI to help craft their arguments, standard format arguments and essay outlines, things like that. So their argument goes in there, like how many premises that they have already decided, a counter argument and their claim. This is where you might say, I want a short story. I want you to begin by introducing the characters. I want 3 points in the plot leading up to a climax that isn't too scary. and then end with a nice short denouement. It's whatever it is that you want to ensure that it follows that plan, because with the entirety of the data set at its disposal, it will find a path through that information, and it might not be the path that you're looking for. The end goal is to really give it the desired outcome that you're looking for. If you have an example, I like to put that right into the prompt. Sometimes my prompts are like a whole page long if I need them to be. And so I'll say like, I want it to look like this, and I'll paste it. And then lastly, narrowing is basically that final time that you have to say, I want it to be no more than 500 words. I need you to write it in the style of Eminem. I need you to use words and vocabulary that a toddler would understand. Whatever that is there. I have students that like saying, don't use anything with the letter E in it. And it doesn't like that. It often can't quite tackle that one, but it's fun to explore that nonetheless. So I have a couple of examples, and then I want to turn you loose with an activity. So if we were looking at grades 1 through 3, and we wanted to create a story that would help students understand what it's like to feel scared on their first day. So here we see role a storyteller, write a short story, and then we've got these 3 steps that we want it to follow. The end goal, a story that demonstrates how to overcome fear and make new friends. We're saying like, guys, this is the big picture. And then to keep it simple. If we were to then kind of edit this into natural language, we might have a prompt that looks like this one. Now, as AI develops and gets better towards natural language, you can really go either direction. You can have a fully crafted paragraph prompt in natural language like this one, or you can actually post the framework. Both of them seem to work really well. I've got 2 more quick examples to show you before I set you loose. So if we were a middle school, grades 6 through 8, and you wanted to create a resource document, maybe your students like my wife's are studying China right now, and you want to study some of the great river systems and give them something to read that is tailored exactly to what it is you're teaching in the classroom at that time. Sometimes I know like finding just the right reading material can be really time consuming, and artificial intelligence is excellent at creating that on the fly, especially when you give it very strict parameters. So you can see here, I want it to be a geography enthusiast. We could have said a travel brochure writer, somebody who lives in a hot air balloon. I don't know. You could do anything you want there. And then we give it some good information, an end goal, and it ends up creating a nice readable document that students can work with in a lot of different ways. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, you got to be careful because of hallucinations, and that is absolutely true. I never give anything to my students that I haven't read at least, a couple of times on my own to make sure that there's accuracy there. I also like to give them the inaccurate ones, and I ask them to correct and edit it because I'm trying to build that awareness in my students of the fallibility of artificial intelligence, especially right now. And the last example that I want to show you before we head off here. Oh, great. Vanessa, what are hallucinations in this context? Hallucinations is a term that people generally use in the field of artificial intelligence for things that it just makes up. Because if you think about the way artificial intelligence is building and writing these things, it's predicting the next most likely word over and over and over and over and over. And if it gets down a branch that it doesn't have information for at that time, whether it doesn't exist or it doesn't have access to it, or it just doesn't want to sometimes, it will just create something. So if you say like, I want 5 journal articles about vaping in a high school and the health detriments of it. It might find them. It might also just know, okay, a journal article needs to have a title, an issue number, a date, and it'll just create those. So you do have to be careful. It is getting better and better at flagging those. Google has a function now where you can fact check its own stuff. But yeah, great question. Thank you. Matt says, these prompting tips are great. Following my training on using school AI, prompting can be a major help. Yes, absolutely. And Matt, if you're curious, at the end of this, I have some resources that I use directly with my students and Frere models this format works perfectly as a Frere model, which if I go back to here, there you go. This is something that I gave my students last week, and we've been working about it. Oh, you're an EduProtocols person. I love that. So let's take a look at this last one here. If we were grades 9 through 12, reviewing heredity and biology, and I wanted to create a whole lesson plan, this will do that for you. What's great is under the steps, you can give it specific content vocabulary that you're studying from the textbook. You can give it a background history of what your students have already been learning, what they're having trouble with, and where you're headed to, and it will incorporate all of that into that model. So let's play with this now. Like I said, it's time to really play. So what I've prepared for you, if you have the slide deck, and I will share this again with the world, this is a hyperlink to, I will share it right here. So that takes us to this doc right here. And this is something that I did with my students, by the way. It gives a nice overview on how to do the Risen framework. But for our meat right here, I have subject areas. So what I'd like you to do is choose one of these tasks. Maybe it's to develop a prompt to create an interactive game to help students learn about grammar and punctuation. Or maybe it's, challenge AI to help students brainstorm or develop. Let's see, what's another fun one down here? Prompt to create a presentation, whatever these are. So what I would challenge you to do is choose one of these prompts and then work through that framework. Enter in the Risen framework model and put your prompt into the chat so we can start to see how these things are built in so many different contexts, and then throw it into Pi and see what it gives out. We'll probably do this for, 5 or 8 minutes. It can take a little time for that. And then we will have a lot of time for reflecting, Q&A, and I can share out some resources for you. Let's see, chat popped up. Yes, Melissa, of course you can do your own. And I'm sorry, I didn't make that quite clear. I did not make that clear. These are suggestions that if you just want to do one of them, do one. If you know you're working on something already, by all means, use this time to really give yourself what you need right now. So just to recap, choose something to create, whether it's on your own or with one of the prompts that I've provided you. Structure it specifically in the Risen framework, and share that prompt in the chat just so other people can experience a whole wealth of these things. And then try putting it into Pi to see what it gives back. And you could even copy and paste other people's prompts from the chat and see what those do. It's going to be a nice little sharing moment here. And I'll set my watch for, we'll check in about 6 or 8 minutes. And once again, if you have any questions, feel free to either unmute or tap it into the chat. And I welcome that. I love the collaboration of these events. Yeah, Mariana, no worries at all. Let's see. I'm going to read your chat real quick. Yeah, so Mariana asks a really good question, especially those that are joining us a little later than the very beginning. The question was about what sets Pi apart. Is it different and does it do things in a way that's more beneficial than another LLM? And so, depending on how deep you are into the world of artificial intelligence, there's a couple of real, like, kind of big players out there. So we've got ChatGPT by OpenAI, which comes in a couple different flavors right now. We've got Google, which changed their name Bard to Gemini. And so Gemini Pro and Ultra are currently available. Then we have Claude, CLAUDE.ai. Claude is kind of one of those sleepers. I'm curious if anyone here is using Claude. Claude is great for analytical work. It's really interesting. You can put spreadsheets and CSV files into it and analyze data. It's really great for that one. And then, of course, we have Pi. And Pi isn't trying to be the end all be all LLM, a little bit the way that ChatGPT and some of those are. It's really focusing on being a personal assistant, but it does all of those other things pretty well too. It does not do any document analysis. You can't put documents into it. It doesn't create images. But what sets it apart is the difference of having these modes. And so currently there are 5, there used to be 4 distinct modes that it will automatically shift into depending on what you're looking for. So maybe it's more analytical, maybe it's more empathetic if you're having a conversation with it. Maybe it's more creative and it's willing to kind of break through the boundaries and be a little more lenient on truth, so to speak. It's like a creative mode. Um, or it's task oriented, where it's going to be exploring very procedural step-by-step things. And so it is a little different that way. I primarily use it conversationally on my phone. That was one of the very first things that I did. What's great is the app, you can just speak with it. And so I like to put it in my headphones and I'll go for a walk and I'll feel like I'm in the future talking to an artificial intelligence and asking it questions and having it explain things. So I hope that explains it. If not, by all means, just ask a follow-up. And I'm going to go check out some of these prompts that are in here real quick. I see people are starting to post them.
I don't mean to break the silence, Jake, but Suno AI,
Huh?
um, that is a rabbit hole that you will have a lot of fun
I'm going to write it down right now.
with.
Why? What
Um,
is it?
it is AI generated music from prompting. Um,
No.
yeah, so listen, I asked my students for an idea on a prompt, and they wanted to make a song about the duck coming across the lemonade stand, man, the old school
Oh
YouTube
yeah,
video,
yeah.
right? And so I asked it to do it in a heavy metal style, aggressive heavy metal style. And the results were absolutely amazing. Um, it writes its own lyrics, or you can paste in your own lyrics if you had ChatGPT or you already had your own lyrics. So, but it'll generate its own lyrics and it'll generate the music, every part of the I mean, yeah. The
It's
song, if you search for it, I don't know if you'll I made it public, but the song is called Quacks of Torment.
okay.
Okay.
I'm looking it up. Quacks of
I will have to say it is hilarious. I also follow Matt, and it is like he did it. I was like, I'm gonna go down that rabbit hole at some point. I haven't done it yet, but like at some point.
Oh,
It's
that's happening. Matt, I don't know if you know Nathan Collins. He's 90s male. He's an Edgy Protocols guy.
okay.
If you've stumbled across our podcast, he's the co-host of the podcast with me.
Okay.
He's literally like across the hall right now doing a presentation on for the same conference, but he's a touring metal man. Like he tours in a
Oh.
doom metal band. So this is happening. Like
I love it. I love it. No, like I said, wait, Larissa and I just did a presentation earlier, and I was like, you know what, people can jump in. So I'm sorry if I just like jumped in and but
Oh,
I I had to share that because Suno is like so fun to play with. And my kids got an absolute kick out of hearing the result of the song. It was, and let me tell you,
yeah.
as a heavy metal fan and a drummer myself, it has an amazing breakdown that
No.
that it wrote on its own. I'm like, how like I couldn't have written a better breakdown than that.
Yeah.
It is so catchy, and I couldn't believe how good it was. And then
Oh, it's
you can
crazy.
build on that same song. So like you can start at the beginning and then it'll build off and build another verse, build another, it'll just keep going. Sorry, didn't mean to hijack, but I just
No,
that
that's
was
cool. I can't
too
wait
fun to share.
I can't wait. Do they have a like a trial model that I can play around with?
Oh, it's free. It's free. You get 50 credits a day, and it only takes 10 credits and it'll generate 2 songs every time.
Okay.
So theoretically, you could generate a 5-part song. It generates like anywhere from 40 seconds to a minute of the song.
Okay.
And so you can just keep building using those credits, and the credits regenerate every day. So it's a really good free program. Yeah.
Okay, we're definitely gonna play with this one. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that you shared that. That right there is the epitome of the Wild West of AI right now. Like everyone knows something different,
Yes.
which I love. I just love it.
And if you haven't come across me yet on TikTok, I'm Mr. K all day on TikTok. So
Do I follow you yet?
I don't know if you follow me. I follow you. I can't
Okay.
remember, but
Send me a DM. I want to check out your stuff. I wrote it
will
down
do.
too. Stuff, Mr. K all day. Is it the letter K?
Yes.
Okay, that's easy to find.
Thanks,
Rad.
Jake.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I can't wait to connect further with you, Matt.
Thanks, Jake.
Cool. Well, let's break this down. Because we've got about 12 minutes left in the session, which is just perfect. So I'm curious about these here. And like I said, feel free, pop in the voice, pop in the chat. And this is just what I'm curious. Did it match your expectations? What did you discover about the capabilities of using Pi? And how might you ethically use this, ethically or unethically, in education? Like what's your feedback? Wax of torment. I can't wait to lose. Oh, awesome. Oops. All right. Anybody want to share? I'm so curious. What is your reflection? What do you think about Pi? What do you think about the Risen framework? How might you use it? And like I said, there's it's a hinge problematic because of the 18 and up. Right now, OpenAI is the only one that's really easy to use with students because they've made that provision. Funny enough, I was sitting with the developers of Gemini at Google a couple of weeks ago, And they were like, well, why don't you use Bard with your students? I'm like, well, because it's limited for 18 and over. They're like, oh, no, we dropped it. It's 13. I'm like, I hate to be that guy, but actually it's not. And they had to pull it up and realize there's a specific caveat that for a workspace education account, you do still have to be 18 for Gemini. Cool. All right. Well, if nobody wants to share, we'll move on. I'll show you what I've got for you. And we'll go. Oh, I like the interface of Pi, the general vibe of it. What does risen mean in California vernacular? Oh yeah, risen. It's a portmanteau, said the English teacher, of the word charisma. So it's the riz portion of charisma. None of the students know that. You have to be a total language nerd to know that. But if someone has riz, it's like that charismatic, like charm, that sexual appeal, that kind of vibe that they have. And so they think it's hilarious that we're doing like the risen framework. So, all right, let me show you what I've got for you. And then I can share a couple of resources. I'll share them in the chat there too. Perfect. So yes, he's talking about them a lot. Pi came up with a great lesson plan, one I've actually done. Really great. I love that, Marilyn. Isn't it funny when you're like, oh, yeah, it thinks a little bit like I do at some point. So a couple of things that I have for you, just closing up here. It was mentioned here, I am on TikTok. I share a lot of tips and tricks about artificial intelligence. And as Matt mentioned, the Edu protocols, it's a framework of scaffolding lessons that is really, it saved my career. This isn't an Edu protocols moment, but I was trying to leave the classroom, as so many of us did. I made a one last ditch effort to change schools and was introduced to this framework that changed my life. I love teaching every day. Yeah, there's still little knuckleheads that drive me insane, but it feels more like it used to. The other one, I would encourage you to check out our podcast, What Teachers Have to Say. That's a picture of Nathan. He's our metalhead. And there's a specific link here that people have found really helpful. It's called A Teacher's Guide to the AI Galaxy, Artificial Intelligence. If you're interested in philosophy of teaching and just kind of the general milieu of what it's like to be a teacher right now, we do that. There's a lot of interesting things coming up. We're going to be working with Pat Young-Pradit, one of the founders of code.org. We're interviewing him next week. And our most recent episode that dropped just about a week ago was a recap of the Stanford University Artificial Intelligence Summit for Education. So there's a lot there for you. I would love if you would help me out. So this is a data set that I'm collecting. It gives you scenarios about whether something is cheating or not. And it's been very interesting using this with students. I have a set for students and a set for educators. And my students have been crunching the numbers and they've realized teachers are more lenient than students are in what they think is cheating. Also in here, I always close with my mantra, which Vanessa might notice here. Rudolf Steiner is a Waldorf person. To receive the children in reverence, educate them in love, and send them forth in freedom. And I truly believe that this works, and AI helps out so much with this to honor that beautiful child in front of me, no matter how old they are, and help them in a way that is personalized to them, which if you've been in the education game, you know, is very, very time consuming and difficult. And artificial intelligence has helped me be able to bridge that time gap with students. And then finally, at the end of the slide deck, there is a survey that I'm sure you've seen before at other events of the conference.